Okay, let's talk about a story we all think we know, right? The story of creation. But what if what we've been told is just the very first page of a much bigger, much more exciting book? Well, in this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers and see what's really going on.
I mean, you know the basics. 7 days, light, dark, heavens, earth, the whole deal. It's a story that shapes so much of our world, but, and this is the key, it's really just the starting line.
So here's the big question, the one that changes everything. What if those first 7 days weren't the end of the story, but just the opening scene? What if creation is still happening right now?
And that's exactly what we're going to get into. Let's move beyond the first 7 days. Okay, so this really boils down to two very different ways of looking at things. On one hand, you've got the common view. Creation is a finished product, something that happened way back when, and that's it, it's done. But on the other hand, a deeper, scholarly look tells a totally different story. Creation is an ongoing process, a dynamic reality that's unfolding even as we speak.
So how do we even get to this idea of an ongoing process? Well, it starts with the words themselves. See, the ancient authors didn't just have one word for create. Nope, they had a whole toolbox of words, each with its own flavor, to talk about this massive idea.
I mean, just look at this range. You've got bara, which is the classic create. But then you also have words that mean to make, to form, like a potter with clay, to build, like an architect, to establish, and even one that means to bring forth, almost like giving birth. This isn't just saying the same thing over and over. Each word adds another layer, showing just how rich and complex their understanding of creation really was.
Exactly. So it's not just about what was made, but how the writers chose to describe it. It's incredibly poetic.
And these weren't abstract philosophical terms. They were metaphors pulled straight from everyday life. Think about it. Creation as a birthing process, bringing forth life. Or God as a vintner, planting a nation like a vineyard, tending to it so it can grow. And then there's the image of God as a master builder, an artisan carefully laying the foundations of the entire universe. These images are just so powerful.
Okay, so this is a lot to take in, right? An ongoing process, all these different words and metaphors. How do we organize it all? Well, a really helpful way to think about it is as a 3-act drama. So you have 3 parts. Step 1 is originating creation. Step 2, continuing creation. And step 3, completing creation. This gives us a really nice arc for the whole story, from beginning to middle to, well, to the future.
All right, Act 1, originating creation. This is the part we're all pretty familiar with, right? The Genesis story. But here's the thing. It's not just about making stuff out of nothing. It's also about setting up the fundamental order of the universe, the patterns for life, for family, for how society is supposed to work.
Now, Act 2, this is where things get really cool. Continuing creation. The big idea here is that God's work isn't done, not by a long shot. The act of creation is constant. God is always sustaining the world, preserving it, but also, and get this, bringing genuinely new realities into existence. So creation is not some static painting hanging on a wall. It's a living, breathing thing.
And that brings us to Act 3, completing creation. This whole act is looking toward the future. It's this idea that all of God's creative work is moving towards something, a new heaven and a new earth. And importantly, this isn't about just scrapping the old world and starting over. It's about taking the new and weaving it into the original creation, bringing everything to its ultimate intended purpose.
Okay, so we have this amazing 3-act drama. But what's the thread that ties it all together? What's the core theme? Well, it turns out it all points to one single fundamental idea. And here it is, a quote that really sums it up. A basic claim is that it has a fundamental relational character. Relational. That's the key. That one word unlocks this entire perspective. It's not just about the stuff God made. It's about the relationships that were formed in the very act of making it.
So, okay, relational creation, that sounds cool, but what does it actually mean? Let's break it down. It basically stands on 3 main pillars. First, the idea that God's very nature is relational. Second, that this relational God chooses to be in a relationship with, well, everything, with all creatures. And third, and this is a big one, the world itself is this incredibly intricate, interconnected web where you can't touch one strand without making the whole thing vibrate. And this interconnectedness is no joke.
It means our actions, human actions, have ripple effects across the whole cosmos. The text talks about how human sin has these devastating consequences for everything else. Suddenly, the ground itself is hostile. A flood is tied to human violence. The prophets constantly link human choices to effects on the entire natural world. Our actions literally echo through the whole web of creation.
So, when you put all this together, what's the big takeaway? It completely flips the script on how we might think about God's role in the world. It's all about an ever-present creator.
This view totally dismantles that old idea of a distant clockmaker god, you know? The one who supposedly built the universe, wound it up like a toy, and then just left it to run on its own.
No, what we see instead is a God who is intensely and constantly present within the created order. A God who is in a relationship with every single creature, not just people, but every animal, every plant, every part of the cosmos.
So maybe the best way to think about it is this. Creation isn't a monologue. It's not a speech God gave once and then dropped the mic. It's a conversation, an ongoing, dynamic, living conversation.
And that leaves us with one last big question. Because if creation really is an ongoing story, if the drama is still unfolding, then what role do we play in writing the next chapter?